You're watching The Big Story. I'm Apurva Sridhar. Let's begin with our top focus story at this hour. This regarding the new hope that has been generated with the vaccine trials that are underway at the Oxford University. Remember, the Indian partners of the Oxford University led the vaccine trials and now planning to apply for the license to start clinical trials in the country soon. Now, the Serum Institute of India has been chosen by Oxford and its partner AstraZeneca to further manufacture the vaccine once it gets ready. Now, the vaccine trials led by Oxford has in fact shown some preliminary positive signs in dealing with the COVID scenario and the COVID virus in place. Now, prominent medical journal Lancet has said that COVID-19 vaccine produced a dual immune response that lasted for at least 2 months.
What this vaccine does particularly well is trigger both arms of the immune system. So in addition to neutralizing antibodies, which other vaccines do, we also see a very strong T-cell response. I think there's increasing evidence that having a T-cell response as well as antibodies could be very important in controlling COVID. We see people who've recovered from a COVID illness who have essentially no measurable antibodies but do have T cells. So the guess there is that the T cells have been important in helping them to clear their infection.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization welcomed the early success that was seen in the Oxford vaccine trial. However, it also reminded the scientific community that the world still has a long way to go in its fight against the coronavirus.
Congratulate our colleagues at the Oxford University's Jenner Institute and the Oxford Vaccine Group and obviously our colleagues at AstraZeneca for getting this data out there. This vaccine was given to 1,000 healthy adults between the ages of 18 and 55 and certainly did not appear to have any serious adverse events other than the expected, in some cases, chills, muscle aches, headaches. And the vaccine did generate neutralizing antibody, I think, in all participants. And in a very small number of participants that were given a booster dose, those responses were even greater. So in generating T-cell mediated responses and generating neutralizing antibody, this is a positive result. But again, there is a long way to go. These are phase 1 studies. We now need to move into larger scale real-world trials, but it is good to see more data and more products moving into this very important phase of vaccine discovery, and we congratulate our colleagues for the progress they have made.
Let me bring in my colleague Afrida for further understanding on this. This is, of course, an extremely crucial step at a time where we're looking at the rise in the number of cases worldwide as well. Afrida, first of all, help us understand now this vaccine trial that we're looking at from the side of the Oxford University has in a way given a positive hope for the entire world. Help us understand about this. When did these trials start, and also what have been the findings of the scientists as far as this entire vaccine is concerned?
Yes, so this is a vaccine, Apurva, let's understand, designed by Oxford and developed by a pharma major called AstraZeneca, which is an Anglo-Swedish pharmaceutical company. So let's now talk about this entire experiment, the Oxford trial, which has yielded very positive results and a lot of hope, like you rightly pointed out. You just heard Michael Ryan, the executive director of WHO, congratulating those who are behind this. So you asked, when did this begin? Well, the trial began in April in the United Kingdom. The vaccine trial began in the month of April this year. The volunteers in the age group of 15 to 55 were administered with this vaccine. 1,000 volunteers were part of this experiment. 500 people were given the experimental vaccine, and the vaccine was shown to produce dual immune response. This is extremely important. You also heard saying one of the experts talking about how this produces neutralizing antibodies, which of course has acted in favor of this vaccine, and that is why this is now being hailed as a great hope. The vaccine, like I said, produced dual immune response. The immune response response lasted for 2 months, and those few people who required a booster dose have shown even better results. So that is so much for the experiment that the Oxford has conducted. Let's remember that phase 1 and phase 2 trials have yielded good and encouraging results. Phase 3 trials are already on at the moment.
All right, Afrida, many thanks for joining us and giving us all those updates. These, of course, are important and crucial updates now coming in. Remember, the Oxford vaccine results is definitely giving world a positive hope in its fight against coronavirus. In fact, let's get further perspective on this and understand this in greater detail. I'm joined by Dr. Subramaniam Swaminathan, who's a senior consultant at the Infectious Diseases Gleneagles Global. Dr. Swaminathan, many thanks for taking time out and speaking to us this afternoon. Help us understand about these Oxford vaccine trials, which has, of course, yielded positive results. It is in a way being seen as a new hope for the world at this point, dealing with this pandemic of unprecedented nature. In your opinion, when we're looking at the findings, which says that it has produced a dual immune response, which has lasted for 2 months, how positive it is in the right direction?
It's a very good step. It's very encouraging. It gives us a lot of hope because worldwide there are lots of candidates moving towards various phases of testing. And this is one of the vaccines in an advanced stage, along with the Chinese vaccine, which is also an adenovirus-based vaccine. So it's good to see so many candidates coming forward and working. But a word of caution, I still think we need more data in terms of real-world data. A phase 3 trial will tell us exactly what's happening. But if this data is reproducible even in the phase 3, I think we should have a very good vaccine available. You never know, maybe even before the end of the year. But having said that, with this kind of a vaccine, there are going to be other concerns which we will find out very shortly.
All right, Dr. Swaminathan, also, as you said, this is a word of caution. We are still awaiting more data on this. But what, according to you, could be the immediate challenges? Because we're also looking at perhaps the Indian partner to also be applying for the license. In terms of the trials, the Oxford trials that have been conducted, are there any immediate challenges for a country like India?
For a country like India, remember, because it's a live virus vaccine, we need to ensure that the cold chain is well maintained and the storage and distribution and things like that are properly done. And also the study candidates are well chosen. So as long as that is done, and usually these are not big concerns and very well run trials, and I'm assuming this will be done just the same way. So I don't see that as a problem. My bigger concern is going to be that we need to understand there's a difference between efficacy and effectiveness. Efficacy is what we see in a trial. Effectiveness is what we see in the real world setting. Let me just take a minute to explain the difference between the two. Please understand it's a live virus vaccine, which basically means pregnant women are automatically disqualified from this kind of vaccines. The second thing is that the study is looking at healthy young people who have a robust immune response to the vaccine. Now, how the older people and the more vulnerable people will respond to this is also another question. The third issue is that those people who have immune defects, whether it's transplantation, cancer chemotherapy, or use of steroids for any other reason and things like that, one, they may not be candidates for this vaccine, and two, even if they do get the vaccine, the benefit may not be as profound. Obviously, these are concerns. I think time will tell us exactly how they will fare. But this concern is there for all live virus vaccine, not just this vaccine. So that is something we need to remember, that this may not be the answer for everybody, but it could be the answer for a huge number of people.
All right, so would you then say that perhaps the age group that has been tested in this is also going to perhaps play a very crucial role at this point? Because we're also not very clear on the kind of age group that this has been tested with. Will that be a concern as well?
I think so, because the age group which has been selected for this are 15 to 55-year-olds, and generally you select people who are in very good health. You generally tend to exclude people who have significant medical issues. Like, for example, if it's a 40-year-old who's on dialysis, they usually don't make it to studies like this. So how that population will fare is not something which is immediately extrapolatable. Generally speaking, with these kind of vaccines, the response is so robust that even they will have a reasonable response. That's a usual assumption, but then, it's an assumption. So again, that's why I think it's important to understand that the efficacy is the best case scenario. The effectiveness will remain to be seen once we start using it in the real world.
All right, and also absolutely, as you pointed out, this is of course a positive sign, and this certainly has sent a wave of positivity and hope around the world. But in terms of the indigenous vaccine that India is also developing at this point, we are of course looking at Covaxin, which is still in the undergoing the trial stage at this point. Are we in a stage, Dr. Swaminathan, to be able to do both? Are we in a stage to perhaps go on with the Covaxin vaccine trials and also at the same time undergo the Oxford vaccine trials as well?
Sure. India is a huge country. We have lots of people who are more than willing to come and participate in trials. But then again, remember, we need to do this in the right way. As long as it's done in the right way, and we are not strangers to vaccine studies or any trials for that matter. So the point is that as long as we do it the right way, I think we will be able to support 2 trials parallelly. And please understand, in China, up to 5 or 6 different vaccine trials are happening parallelly. So it's not at all unusual for large countries to be able to support 5 or 6 different vaccine trials parallelly. It is definitely possible. Just requires proper following of SOPs and good oversight and proper data monitoring and things like that. As long as that is done, it's definitely possible. And I like the idea of looking at different vaccine candidates, because one vaccine may not be the answer for everybody. We need to have different technologies which can be available for others.
All right, Dr. Swaminathan, one final question on this. If you can help us explain the process from here on, what is the road ahead? We are, of course, looking at the fact that this has, of course, given out a hope of positivity. But what happens from here on, whether it is in the UK or in India? What is the road ahead after this step?
Okay, so this phase 1, phase 2 study has only looked at laboratory markers of protection, which is what we call a surrogate marker. It's not the actual. We are extrapolating it and saying that if they get these things, they should be protected against COVID. Now we should go one step further and give it to people who have never been exposed to COVID and then see, does it really protect them against COVID? I mean, the logical thinking would be yes, but there are so many unknowns about a new disease. We should also always be careful about it. And also remember that the virus may change over time. So whether the vaccine will still be effective at the end of 6 months and things like that is always a concern. So for many reasons, I think a phase 3 trial is absolutely essential, so that we know where the bugs are, we can iron it out, and then make sure that we have an excellent process going forward, being administered to the patients and to the general population. And we don't have any hiccups or any adverse effects secondary to the use of it.
All right, Dr. Subramaniam Swaminathan, many thanks for speaking to us and helping us understand the process and what it really means. This is, of course, being looked at as with extreme positivity, with the Oxford vaccine results also now being looked at this point. And we will hope, perhaps, as you said, that we will get the vaccine by the end of this year. Dr. Swaminathan, many thanks for speaking to us.
My pleasure.
And with that, we are slipping to a very short break. Back with more news and updates on the other side. We're getting some news that's breaking this minute. This is a video from Balia in Uttar Pradesh. Few of the jail inmates could be seen exchanging blows. The scuffle took place over a comment on a local MP. 3 supporters of the Neta took on the man who passed the comment and beat him up. The jail authorities right now are silent on this incident, even as this entire video has gone viral. More news that's breaking this minute. The latest on the Rajasthan political drama which continues. Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot is holding a legislative party meet at the Hotel Fairmount in Jaipur, where the Congress MLAs have been camping for days now. Congress leader Ajay Makhan, the state unit president Govind Singh Dostara and others are present in this meeting that is taking place. That's the latest update now coming in, and the Rajasthan political crisis there continuing at this point. Remember, we are of course looking at those updates coming in. As far as the legal update is concerned, the Rajasthan High Court, remember, has reserved its order on the Congress rebel MLA's plea. But this is of course on the political front where we're looking at the news that is breaking in at this point. There is of course a meeting that is taking place with the Gehlot camp currently in a huddle, holding a CLP meet at this point at the Hotel Fairmount in Jaipur, where the Congress MLAs have been camping for days now. Now, in this meeting that is taking place, we are looking at Congress leader Ajay Makan, the state unit president Govind Singh Dostara, and many others who are currently present at the meeting, and this legislative party meeting which is currently underway at the Jaipur Hotel. In fact, top Congress leaders of the Gehlot camp are currently there, and right now we're looking at all of these developments coming in. At the same time, we're also looking at this coming in at a time that the Rajasthan High Court has reserved its order on the rebel Congress MLA's plea. The pilot camp had challenged the disqualification notice sent by the speaker, maintaining that voicing dissent does not amount to defection. Remember, the deadline for the rebel MLAs to reply to the speaker's notice ends at 5:30 p.m. later today. More news that's breaking this minute. The Sero survey reveals only 23.48% of the people are affected by coronavirus in Delhi, which has several pockets of dense population. For all the 11 districts of Delhi, survey teams were formed. The blood samples were collected from selected individuals. Now, the tests were done, and this has helped in identification of the presence of antibodies in general population. The study also indicates that a large number of infected persons remained asymptomatic. Let me further bring in my colleague Ayushman for further understanding on this. Ayushman, what has been the big takeaways of the Sero survey that was conducted in the national capital? What has the study revealed, and what should be the possible outcome? What are we going to be looking at from here on in Delhi's fight against coronavirus?
Well, Apurva, first of all, it is very important to clarify that the entire Sero survey, which was there for over 21,000 of people, was conducted in all across the national capital. It was not just limited to the containment zone. So it is for the entire population of the Delhi. Now, if you tabulate this data for the overall population of the national capital, it comes at around more than 46 lakh of people, because Sero surveillance normally identifies the prevalence of COVID infection. So if you see this number, nearly 1/4 of the population of the national capital has been either exposed or formed antibodies against the COVID infection. This clearly is the takeaway which we can get from this Sero survey. Also, Purva, whether we are heading towards a herd immunity, because it has also been particularly mentioned that in the Sero survey that most of the people were having asymptomatic condition. Now today, Health Ministry is having a PC in which NCDC Director Sujit Singh will also be there to tell about the facts of what are the important takeaways from this. But for now, we can tell, Apurva, that nearly 1 out of every 4 person has generated the antibody.
All right, Ayushman, many thanks for joining us and bringing us all those updates. Now, incessant rains for the last 3 days has intensified the flood situation in Assam. The Brahmaputra River and its tributaries have been overflowing above the danger mark in several of the areas. Close to 56 people have been rescued alone in the Golpara district by the NDRF, which is one of the worst affected districts at this point. A total of 111 people have lost their lives across the state. 85 people have died because of flood-related incidents, and 26 others have been killed because of the landslides. Nearly 4 million people have been displaced in Assam and its neighbouring Nepal due to heavy flooding from the monsoon rains. Meanwhile, the United Nations has now lent its support to the government of India. Now, Assam Chief Minister Sarbananda Sonowal inspected an embankment damaged by the rainfall and increased water flow in the Buradia River in the Nalbari district. In fact, Assam Chief Minister will further visit the flood-affected districts of Chirang, Boigong and many other areas which has been worst affected by the floods. In fact, we've been getting several ground reports coming in of all the worst affected areas. In fact, over 50,000 people, and these are people who have been worst affected by the floods, have already been moved to temporary relief camps at this point. Several thousands have also now taken shelter at the relief camps that have been set up by the government. My colleague Arindam, in fact, brought us this report from the Moregaon area.
There seems to be no end to the miseries of the flood-affected people in Assam. We are right now in Moregaon district, which is one of the worst affected areas by this river flood. And these are the flood-affected people who are right now forced to take shelter in these makeshift camps. These flood-affected people have set up these camps by themselves. They fled their villages when flash floods created havoc. They somehow fled with their lives and right now taking shelter in this type of camps on various higher grounds available. They may be bridges, embankments, roads and highways. Thousands of such people are taking shelter in these type of camps that they have set up for themselves. Over 50,000 people are taking shelter in various relief camps set up by respective district administration. The overall flood scenario in Assam has somewhat improved, but as you can see, the Met Department has predicted more rainfall in the days ahead, which may worsen the flood scenario further. As you can see, the pathetic condition that these people are right now forced to live in. Over 25 lakh people still remains displaced in 24 districts of the state.
Meanwhile, 90% of the Kaziranga National Park has submerged due to the flood waters. In fact, according to the Assam government's latest data, 143 animals have been rescued, 116 animals including 88 deers and 11 rhinos have been killed because of the floods.